All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see if we can get to a seat so we can get started. It's 2:47. All right, so good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. I truly appreciate it. I'm sure there weren't much parking outside, being that the kids were getting dismissed at the same time. So, as I said, email about today activity, just a quick summary of why we decided that this would be a good in-service evening for us. The fact that the Mecca Program has been a part of Welland history. We are one of the oldest schools, a part of the Mecca Program. We've been in since 1968, and I feel like it's a part of our community. It's Welland. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity for Mrs. Thomas to come in and give us a good history and the vision of Mecca 2.0. All right, so Mrs. Millie Thomas.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I know you asked this of your students, so hello. I know you all want to go home. It's been a full day of education, but I am so excited to be here. As Omar said, my name is Millie Arbaje Thomas. I am the president and CEO of Mecca Inc., or Mecca headquarters in Boston. And super excited to be in one of my favorite districts because I love Tony and I love Omar. And I love other students that are here trying to do incredible work. So very excited about being here. Again, it's been maybe 3 years since I was last here before the pandemic in a smaller group setting. So this is the first time where Mecca has actually come down to address an entire school district. We go to school committees, we go to parent groups, we go to school leadership, but never actually to the entire town. So we are super excited about this and about selecting us to come here and talk to you for the reasons that Omar said, being part of the Mecca program. So I'm a Mecca mom, and I actually, my kids go to the Brookline School District, and before coming to do that job, I was running nonprofits in Boston and decided that I was going to retire in my early 40s, and just spend some time volunteering at schools and doing some consulting. But then this job opportunity came around, and I said, what an amazing opportunity to work for something that impacts the state, that impacts even the nation. We are a historic program. We live in the archives of Northeastern University. People research us all the time. There's books on us, there's movies on us. And I was like, if I could go back to work, it would have to be something really meaningful and impactful, and Mecca really actually fulfilled that vision for me. So I want to share with you a little bit about the Mecca program, its history. I'm here with my colleague, Colin, who was our Director of Communications, Outreach, and Engagement for Mecca. We actually met in Brookline as two parents who were part of the parent engagement in our school community. And from there, we built a relationship that was professional and decided to work together to bring Mecca to this 2.0 that you heard Omar mentioned. And so apologies for calling him Omar, Dr. Easy, but I like being laid back. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take you to a couple of just historical things and just a couple of facts about the Mecca program. Colin is going to take us through some historical presentation, and then I'm going to talk to you about the actual Mecca program at headquarters and what we are doing right now to support districts, students, and families, so that you, as the people that are in the front line working with our students and working with the community, can decide if there's ways for us to partner and work together. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, I'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A and just any clarifications or any thoughts or comments that people have. Are we good with that? We're cool? All right, give me a little bit of energy every once in a while, because thank you. Because I have not been out since COVID. This is my first presentation since I think 2020. I think that's the year that everything started. So I'm so excited to be out in person. This is our first in person. Thank you, Wayland, for getting us out of the office. So for those of, we love to do this presentation just because, a lot of people think they know what MECO is. It's been around for a very long time. You guys have been working here forever, or you guys have been here new, and people just think that they assume what the MECO program is. And every time I do this presentation, whether it's with legislators, with the community, with leaders that have been around forever, they always learn something new. So hopefully that's what will happen today. So the MECO program, you would think that the MECO actually means, every single word means something, but the MECO is for Metropolitan and then the word council. So it's the Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunity. It began in 1966, and it was an organizing effort by parents in Boston and parents in the suburbs. This is what I love about it as a social worker by trade. The MECO program began solely because of parents. The power of parents, in 55 years, here we are still today doing this. So they realized that their school districts was segregated, racially isolated in the suburbs. The Boston people realized the school opportunities there were really racially segregated, and the school wasn't doing anything to integrate. So both group of people came together to start the MECO program. Right now, the MECO program is about school integration. So as you can see here, any school that is racially imbalanced actually qualifies under the MECO program. And as you can see here, you guys are not doing too bad, actually. Most of these slide decks that I actually show are in the 90% white in almost all of our MECO communities. So you guys are doing pretty decent considering our 33 communities, which is usually 90% white. So there's the racial imbalance, here in terms of Wayland versus Boston, and because you guys are 70% white, it qualifies as racially isolated. A lot of people refer to the MECO program as the busing program. I hate that. Every single time that when I got this job several years ago, and the news would come to do an interview about one thing or the other, they would say the Boston busing program. I'm like, listen, the bus is how we get there. It is not a busing program. It is not a movement of wheels. It is a movement of people. And yeah, thank you, giving me some positive feedback here. So that's what I like to always remind people about, it's really about diversity, it's really about integration, it's really not about just busing kids here for just an opportunity for our students from Boston. It's an opportunity for everybody. And when people really understand that the MECO program is intended to be a trailblazer in education, to be an example for the rest of the nation, you will feel a sense of a responsibility that I feel every single day, that we can actually do better. And we have other people that are looking to see how we can improve our program and then be an example for others. So when you are having an integrated experience, what you do is you're breaking down racial barriers among each other. You're appreciating the diversity that exists in the world. You're learning from somebody right next to you, as opposed to whatever you hear in the news. You're learning from the shared experiences of everybody, and that's from both ways. Even for the Boston students to learn about what suburban people experience and go through, and the experiences that they have and opportunities that they have, and the same things on the Boston side. But the most important thing too is the global society, that when you go into this workforce these days, it's going to be more diverse, and we don't want to surprise people when they get there, about how do I work with people that look different than me. So in 1968 is when Wayland came about. So let's do a round of applause for Wayland. So we started in 1966, and Wayland became a town in 1968. I need you to remember that, because Colin is going to tell you some historical context about what happened in that year, and possibly why Wayland organized and started the MECO program in that particular year. So we have 33 different distinct communities in the MECO program, from the South Shore to the North Shore. And every time I look at this, I ask Colin, where's that? At the West? The West, Metro West, and we have 3,100 students that leave Boston every single day to these 33 communities. As you see over here, we haven't had any addition to the MECO program since 1977. I do want to tell you that after George Floyd was assassinated, we have actually received about 12 requests to join the MECO program, and there's a historical relevance to people wanting to to activate and organize when some racial situation happens that shakes up the nation. So we have about 12 different communities that actually want to join the MECO program right now. how is the Mecca program funded? So and how is it supported? So I don't know. Sometimes people don't know about the money too, and they think that the school community funds the entire program. So the Mecca program is fully funded by the state of Massachusetts. Completely by the state of Massachusetts. So we go and we lobby the legislators from all 33 communities and all the Boston legislators, and we talk to them about the benefit of this program. And that's actually one of my biggest jobs in downtown, because since I don't work for a school district, I'm like the lobbyist. And we have a lobbying firm that actually works with us every single year. We meet with all the legislators to let them know how the towns are doing and why we need to continue to get a money increase. Since I've been there in the last 4 years, I think when I started there, the program was $21 million, and the program right now is $27.9 million. So we've increased about $6 million. Yes, thank you. We'll take another applause for that. I'm going to have this person here. Every time something good happens, start the applause, okay? Just so we cannot fall asleep here. So we're at $27.9 million, and that money gets distributed to all of the Mecca communities. And then a little bit of that also goes to downtown, to the headquarters office for the administration of the program and the things that we do in Boston. But all this money comes right back out to the communities on a per pupil cost. The reason why it's state funded is because of the Racial Imbalance Act. And basically that is an act that came about, Colin will say a little bit more, but back in the 60s, to say that the state of Massachusetts needs to stand behind schools that are actually, that want to be balanced. So they came up with the Racial Imbalance Act and say if your school is racially imbalanced, you need to do something to actually balance that out. And then that was what created the Mecca program, and it was called this Massachusetts General Law. If you ever want to study that for those social studies teachers, that's actually in the books, and that is the creation of the Mecca program, because it was the way for Massachusetts to address racially imbalanced schools. So every year we go to the legislators, we advocate for this, we get this Mecca line item, and the Mecca line item every year gets debated with the governor. We already passed it with the governor right now. He already put it in for 27.9. Then we go with the House of Representatives. Then we go to the senators. And then we go to conference committee. And then we end up with our final number. So every year we have to fight for that money, which I actually find that to be a little bit redundant. And I don't like it, because if the program has been around for so long, why do we have to every single year fight for it? But they've never defunded it, because the state believes this is their only program to address racial isolation. But I think it's, why do we spend so much time and money lobbying if we're going to have the program anyways? Let's just kind of have it funded all the time. So, and then there's also Chapter 70 money. Every student in the state of Massachusetts gets a per pupil dollar that wherever they get enrolled in school, that money follows them. So there's a bucket of money that comes to Wayland also for per pupil for Chapter 70. And if they classify as ELL or special ed, there's federal dollars that come with that as well. So all of those things actually sum up the Mecca per pupil for the Mecca students. Right now, the actual grant here for Wayland is $1 million, whatever you math people, 1,046,813. Did I say that right? Okay, the zeros, Thank you. And we have 131 students right now. So this money is what gets used to pay for the Mecca staff that is here in this community, in addition to the transportation and any additional supports. Tony does a lot of incredible creative things here with that. Last summer we paid with the Mecca grant from here for them to go to summer school, to do tutorials, to do SAT classes in Boston, to do the tour, the cultural tour. So there's a lot of opportunities in addition to paying for staff and busing. And then the Mecca program is also considered, under the state of Massachusetts, is considered to be a marginal seat program. A marginal seat means that the school system already exists, that building is there, that teachers are there. Therefore, the cost of every Mecca student is marginal. So that's very important, because sometimes when we take opposition with the Mecca program in school committees or even in parent groups that say, why do we have this? It's costing us too much. One, they don't know how the program goes, and they say they're overcrowded. Oh, we're overcrowded. That happens in my school. So where Colin and I go to school, our school was set up to be 400 students. Our school is now 800 students. So they say, why do we have Mecca there? Well, the Mecca program is marginal seat, which means we go to seat availability. So that means even though our schools is overcrowded, but if the fourth grade has 19 students and you can up it to 20 because it's your maximum, for your school, then that means it's overcrowded overall, but one more student in section 3A is not going to do anything. So that's what marginal seat, and that's when people ask us, well, why is it that the Mecca program, our per pupil here is $20,000? It's not bringing in enough money. I'm like, well, we're bringing diversity of students, we're bringing diversity of staff, we're bringing our own money, we're paying for our transportation. I think it's a win-win situation for everyone, and I think that one does deserve a round of applause. So that's what marginal seat means, okay? So that is how the program operates. That's why the cost of the program is marginal. We might be bringing in $10,000 per student versus your $20,000. I don't know what your per pupil is, but that's because the seat is, the cost is marginal. And either way, your seat would have remained empty, right? So we can take in all grades, even though some districts actually prefer the earlier grades for obvious reasons, but it's not a requirement of the Mecca program. Oh, awesome. And now I'm going to introduce Colin, who's going to talk to us about history. Thank you.
Thanks, Millie. Hi, everybody. My name is Colin Stokes. I get to work with that amazing leader. And I'm happy to be in Wayland, too, because I went to Happy Hollow for first grade before I moved to Texas. Never thought I'd say that to a group of people and get a round of applause. Okay, so now I live in Brookline, as Millie said, and one of the things that I've been really passionate about is discovering this history. My kids, and maybe you can relate to this, history teachers and social studies teachers, I'll be talking a lot to you. My kids have probably learned about the American Revolution like 4 or 5 times since kindergarten, and I feel like this is a revolution that we don't teach enough. And so let's get started. So, social studies, history teachers, civics teachers, who've I got here? Raise your hands or clap. Good, yay, we love you. You know what this one is, right? 1954 Brown v. Board. Can someone shout it out? Like, basically?
Free and appropriate public education.
Yes, I heard things about segregation and public education. Yes, this was the separate but equal is not constitutional, that schools need to be integrated. There is, the Constitution protects that facet of our lives. So 1954, so that means that we integrated all of our schools, right? No. And you probably have pictures in your head coming up of lots of scenes from the South of brave Ruby Bridges and Little Rock students being escorted by federal marshals into their schools. And we think of the civil rights movement as really having pivotal moments during that time in the South. So what was happening in the North? So here we are during this period of time. Boston was incredibly segregated too. Even though it was a state that had passed the very first law in 1855, desegregating their schools that had not been enforced, obviously. And in the city at the time in the 1950s, you really had 2 unequal school systems. And a school committee that was run, that was entirely white and that was run by this woman on your right, Louise Day Hicks. And the woman on the left is a woman I had not heard of until I started to work at Mecca, but I hope everyone will know her name before too much longer. Ruth Batson was a mom in Roxbury, really civically minded, loved to volunteer, loved to help out at her school. And she learned that her daughter didn't have any science projects, but a friend of hers was talking about a science project. A friend of hers who was white, who lived in another part of the city, was like, "Are you working on your science project?" She's like, what is that, this thing you talk of, a science project? I do not know. And I think my kid should have that too. So she went to her principal of the black school, and she said, well, we don't have the money to do that, but we could try to put something together for your daughter. And Ruth Batson said, that's nice, but that's not good enough. So she went, kind of, as I'm sure you know parents who do, just kept on asking and said, how do I get this for my child? My child is entitled to equal access. Until finally she got herself referred over to the NAACP in Boston. And said, all right, so hook me up. How do I fix this challenge with these segregated schools? And the NAACP said, you should talk to the education committee. And Ruth Batson said, all right, who's in charge of the education committee? And they said, you are. So Ruth Batson became the chair of the Education Committee of the NAACP in Boston and found herself facing off with this Louise Day Hicks person. The NAACP was, talking to the school committee over and over, not getting anywhere. Finally, they arranged to speak at a school committee meeting. I don't know if you've had any tumultuous school committee meetings of late. This was a particularly epic one. In 1963, June 11th, Ruth Batson is here delivering the 14 demands that Boston's black parents had. They're demands that might sound familiar to you. Here's 3 of them. In-service training for principals and teachers in the area of human relations. That's 1960s speak for what we're doing right now. Training for teachers and principals on, human relations or anti-racism or unconscious bias or whatever the terms might be. They also talk about using representative books in curricula. We might have heard that come up every now and then. And they talk, of course, about hiring and assigning of teachers. So basically asking for the things that we continue to know are really, really important moves to create integrated, equitable schools. The school committee in Boston said hard no, right? They said not only do we not want to talk about segregation, we don't think it exists. We don't think that the schools in Boston are segregated. And if they are, it's not anybody's fault, it's just the way people live. And people want to live in different neighborhoods, there's nothing we can do about that. And even if there were something we could do about that, we don't think it's bad. We think that all these schools are perfectly fine the way they are. The Boston community was organized, and they did not accept that answer. They began a series of some of the most remarkable and creative protests that I had never heard of. They did this picketing in front of the school committee every day, for one thing. That's not too unusual. One amazing thing that they did was boycotts, but not just boycotts, walk out and hold signs. They actually organized their own kind of schools for a day, like pop-up schools, freedom schools they called them, in churches and community centers all throughout the city of Boston, where the students would go to school instead, and they would learn Black history curriculum from volunteer parents. They would learn about nonviolent resistance. They would basically be creating the kind of school that they wanted to see for their own kids. And they did that for two years. In the second year, people from the suburbs started to hear about this, and they enrolled in the freedom schools too. Another incredibly creative response was this woman, Ellen Jackson. She noticed that it was actually technically okay to enroll your kid in any school in Boston. They just wouldn't bus you there. They just wouldn't provide transportation. So if you can get yourself to the white side of town and enroll your kid, we can't stop you. So Ellen Jackson said, all right, let's organize. She got hundreds and hundreds of Boston parents to rent buses, rent vans, borrow cars, carpool, and get their kids to schools that had more opportunity, more books, more resources, a better curriculum, science projects. That ran for several years under the name of Operation Exodus. That, to me, gives you some idea of how just dedicated and determined these folks were, that they were thinking of this as just a life and death struggle to get education for their children. So all this is going on in the city of Boston, and around the city of Boston are all those towns that we saw on that map. And around the city are lots and lots of activists who are responding every day to these moves, kind of through the political side of things. So you had a law that ended up passing that we just heard about from 1965, originally proposed by the state senator in Boston, Royal Bowling, but supported by a lot of suburbs who had to sort of say, yes, we agree with this. That was that Racial Imbalance Act that allowed for some possibilities to mitigate this racial imbalance. And then I'm proud to say it was in Brookline and several other towns that activists, school committee members, parents started to feel that it was time for them to get involved in the civil rights movement as well. And they actually started to hatch the idea of Metco before it was called that. Just the idea that, how can we just be part of a solution here while the school committee in Boston is so steadfast in saying no? And here's some, the folks that I want to introduce you to here are Leon Trilling, the guy I want to play in the movie, and Joseph Calori and Ruth Batson, who we just already met. They had a meeting in Brookline and with some superintendents, some school committees, and a lot of students. And it was the students that actually convinced Ruth Batson that maybe this could work. Maybe there was a possibility that these communities would be welcoming. So they created a nonprofit in a few months. They just said, let's do this. They didn't wait for any kind of bureaucracy to approve it. They just formed it. And they called it the Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunity, which is kind of interesting. They were thinking of it as a way that these regions of the Boston area could get together and form solutions for education. Not just let's enroll students, but they were thinking of it even then as something maybe bigger than just an exchange. Maybe it was some kind of solution to educational inequity. 1966, barely months after they hatched this idea, they were sending out buses, 200 plus kids going out to 7 towns. And here's a mom on the first day sending her son out to Braintree. That was 66. So they get through school year 66, 67. School year 67, 68 starts. And do you know what time this headline was from? Memphis sniper kills Martin Luther King. Does anybody know? History teachers? April 1968. Very good. So, spring of your sophomore year, spring of your 4th grade year, whatever it was. The students who are in maybe their second year of going to these white districts. And these white districts in their second year of having this desegregation program are faced with this crisis that really, really shook the core of everyone who was interested in pursuing racial justice. And you can see the ways that it played out, and if you read the papers, these are headlines just from the preceding weeks. Children hungry for facts on racism, teachers told. Black history stressed at Mecca conference. Mecca organized a student conference in response to the killing of Martin Luther King because they knew that if these students couldn't find a way forward, that there was no way this program was going to work. And they held this conference, they surveyed the districts, they surveyed the parents to say, do we want to keep going? Is this possible? Can we work together if there's this much fear and distrust? And as you see on the bottom, the answer was yes. Students, towns up in Metco. Very crisp headline writing. In fact, they weren't just up, they doubled. The number of districts that were part of Metco went from 14 to 28 between the spring of 68 and the fall of 68. And Wayland, as Millie mentioned, was one of those towns. Thank you. Yes. So that's sort of the main historical chapters that I want everybody to be grounded in as they think of Metco. And, as you think of Wayland, because this is a part of your history too. And it's a part of your history if you live in Concord, if you live in any of those 33 towns. Metco is a part of who you are. And it's not just a Boston program, it's a integration program. And it wasn't founded by folks outside, it was founded by people who lived here. So if there's things that you believe should be done differently, if there's things that you feel could be better, what Metco's origins teach us is that you need to just find other people, talk about it, and find some ways to do it, because it's possible. And all these years later, we're still doing it. Jean McGuire, many of you might know, she was in charge of Metco for 43 years. Millie got to take the helm just a few years back, and now we're really looking at what is Metco in 2022. And that's what I'm very excited to bring Millie back to talk about. Thanks for listening. Yay!
Awesome. Did anybody, just by raise of hand, did anybody learn something new that you didn't know about Metco before? Just raise your hand. Awesome. I freaking knew it. We were going to bring you something new. Awesome. The last part of the presentation is Metco Today, so I'll see how fast I can get through that because I want to respect your time and see if there's any other thoughts or questions afterwards. But one of the things that I'm focusing on, is, again, like I said, because I'm a social worker, I just love grassroots movement and just the fact that the Mecca program began by parents in urban and suburban, and they made their own choice to make this happen, and it's still here today is just like amazing to me. I wanted to make another little clarification about the Mecca program that I forgot to mention during the funding. Sometimes people think that how many of you guys think that the Mecca program is based on the student's income? Do you know if it's based on income? Oh, so maybe you guys might kind of know how it's based, but so income plays no part in the Mecca program, and when people join the Mecca program, there's no income requirements at all. We don't even ask that question, because again, the whole purpose of this was integration. And, I believe very strongly on that. Some people say, oh, we should only, try to support the low-income students so that they can get a better education, but I personally am completely against that, because it just reinforces the stereotype that some people have that every single person that's black and brown is poor. So you have a little bit of everything. You have people that are leaders, you have people that are executives, you have people that live in public housing, that own their own properties. You have a little bit of everything in Mecca, and that is intentional. I wouldn't have been part of the Mecca program if it was income-based either. So, there's a different of that type of diversity that you bring when you expose people, that people of color have different levels like anybody else, so that we are not an income-based program at all. So you will see students that come from all different backgrounds. And that is intentional. Our only purpose is integration of race, not of anything else. In terms of, what I'm focusing on right now, and Omar alluded to this earlier, I've been talking a lot about Mecca 2.0. And what does Mecca 2.0 means? We're still trying to develop this vision, but the thing is that the Mecca program has existed for all of these years, and sometimes I feel as a parent who already has a 16-year-old, I didn't even know the history of the Mecca program until I got in the job. So we're going around trying to teach people the history, because if it teaches the history, we can inspire people to do better. But also that, it's not just about continuing the same business as usual, continuing to bus students over here. How do we actually bring Mecca to the next level of full integration? I know that Perry, for example, a few years ago, you and I were talking about how you were actually going to different states to recruit diverse teachers. I thought that was pretty amazing, and I think that deserves a round of applause of the district trying to do that. Omar recently about the athlete, that was one of the stories that we featured last week in our newsletter. So many times that there's a racial incident that happens, everybody always says we condemn it. Can we just stop just saying it, and can we do something about it? And that's what I loved about what happened here, a few weeks ago, in terms of, not that I love the incident, obviously, but I love the end result. I don't think I've seen, since I've been here, I have not seen that kind of boldness. So something, the people that are being racist out there, they're bold. They're bold because they feel like they're comfortable, they can do whatever they need to do, they can say whatever they need to say, but guess what? We need bolder. And I commend Waylon for doing that. Bolder. Go find the people where they are and bring them to work. Go find a superintendent who's a person of color who can lead the district and have a different lens. We only have 2 of those in 33 communities, and probably less than 5 in the whole state. That's not acceptable. And then the fact that you're going to say, we're going to stop playing sports until you get your stuff together, because it's not okay for our students to be hurt. What that girl is experiencing right now, and that was in the local news, if you guys haven't seen it, that was a news story, that was pretty powerful. What I did want to elevate, that Waylon's, leadership took a big role in that, and that's why we featured that story last week, because we said we want other superintendents and other school committees to see that this is the kind of action that we're looking for. So I came up with, this, I love acronyms. Colin knows I love the MMMM. You're going to hear me talking about the Monday Mecca message, the 3 I's. So I'm really into these kind of themes. It's mostly for me to remember things and not to forget them. But things that I'm working on right now is, how do we remain inspired to do this work? Because after George Floyd, we had a lot of people taking on anti-racist resolutions, doing more diverse hires, being more bold, with the work that they do. But how do we remain inspired to do this and not lose that fire, that every single day, no matter what's happening nationally, locally, there's still work to be done? How do we remain intentional about this work and be very strategic about what the impact it is that we're trying to achieve? Again, going out to a place to look for diverse hires, telling someone, we're not going to play with you anymore, that is intentional. And then how do we insist that we can do better? We can always do better. We can always win, and that's all of us, and that's every single school system. Everybody can do better. So with that in mind, we started to adopt this, right after George Floyd, was killed, there was all this talks about, what is Mecca doing? Are we holding people to different accountabilities, to standards? It's a voluntary program, so we can't make people do anything, but we're hoping that people will remain inspired to actually do this work because you care about the work that you do because you're in education and you are in the most perfect position to really impact the future of our nation, of our students. Look how many people they move on and go on to do bigger and better things and impact even bigger systems. We have so many alum who can do that. You have the Wayland ladies that does the hard candy and fruit snacks. You guys heard about that, and they're going around doing all this stuff and raising money and changing the narrative. So I do believe that one person can make a difference. People always say, well, is a little bit of diversity enough? It's not enough, but it's enough to make a difference. It's enough to make a difference because you don't never know. Look at Sean, the guy, your student, that he was our graduation speaker. He was your president of your student council a couple of years ago. I love that kid. And it's like he was just a trailblazer in so many ways for those of you that got to know him and really was a leader. So you never know what impacts one person's gonna have. So right now we're playing around with this vision. We have a Mecca leadership retreat happening in March. We're gonna be at the Gillette Stadium with all of the superintendents and Mecca directors to really talk about this 2.0. And the vision is that every student in a Mecca district will experience an inclusive, equitable, and anti-racist education. Notice it doesn't say every Mecca student. It's every student in a Mecca town. We believe that Mecca membership is special, that you are participating in Mecca because you want to make a difference, because you want to be held to higher standards than anybody else. And I do expect our Mecca districts to be better than the next town. If they don't participate in Mecca, they don't have the same lens that we have. So that's what we want for every single student, because everybody benefits, not just people of color. If you have an equitable, inclusive, anti-racist education, that you know a little bit about everything out there, you know the true history, everybody receives, what they need to receive, and everybody feels like they belong, everybody wins. I mean, we're raising kids during a dual pandemic right now. How hard has it been for all of you? And I know because my husband is the principal. Every day he comes home so stressed and so run down from all the things that he has to work on right now, dealing with the mental health of our students, dealing with the community, dealing with the pandemic. It's not easy. So right now, our theory of change is that we want to work with the three constituents that we serve the most, and that is our Boston students and families, our suburban students and families, and our school districts and their leaders and educators. So what we believe in is, we see that little arrow going right now, is that if we actually support our Mecca parents and elevate their skills around leadership and advocacy and speaking up, and organizing, going back to our roots of how the Mecca program started, and we support them both in their backyards in Boston, but also giving them the skills to come and advocate, to have a voice here in this community. And then we educate the suburban communities on what the program is, how it started, why it's here, why it's in your community, why do you have something to say, why do you have impact. These are your legislators that are voting on the Mecca funding every single year. And then how can we then influence the school leaders to really, adopt practices that are going to make a difference for our students. So, things that we're doing right now that could be ways that we can support you is that, right now we are actually having support you. Is that, right now we are actually having this anti-racism roadmap that we're embarking on at headquarters. And we actually have an equity audit firm that we're working with that provides free equity audits. Omar already asked me for the information on that. It's very low-key way to get started on this. It's not like a heavy-duty year-long program way to do this, but like maybe a 20-hour commitment, and you get a nice report back. And then if you want them to come in and consult and do more work, they can do deeper work. We're asking all districts if they can do foundational training on anti-racism and anti-bias and microaggressions, so we can have the skills, necessary to, make people feel welcomed and know what to do and say. For example, I always talk about this, and, my daughter got assigned an assignment that really made her really sad at school, and we had to have a meeting about this with the school leadership, because Her, her assignment was they were talking about slavery. And then her assignment was the class got divided into two, and you had to either say why slavery was bad, but then why slavery was good. So we found her, and the thing is, this is the stuff that's still in the books, and it was one of the pages out of a curriculum. And when we talked to the teacher, we're like, well, why is this even happening? Will we ever, so let's put it in another context, will we ever tell students to defend why the Holocaust was a good thing? We would never give that assignment, but we did it for slavery, the financial benefits of it. So she was distraught. We barely noticed this until we saw her in in her room, just staring at the paper, like, why aren't you doing your homework? She's like, I'm torn. Why am I defending this? So that's why it's important, to have these trainings and really kind of with that lens. Then we're also working on a benchmark for the Mecca Program. We actually are going to meet in this retreat to talk about a Mecca Continuum of Practice is what we're calling it. The Bedford superintendent introduced this idea that, if we can have a continuum of what does it mean to be a starting Mecca district, a emerging Mecca district, what is my 3 words? Emerging and ideal. But on all different areas in terms of diversity, education, student voice, parent engagement, discipline practices. So we're going to work as a MECO leadership to actually develop this tool so that nobody has to feel like they're doing anything wrong. It's a continuum. We're always growing. So you just find out, where are you in that ramp? Where do you want to be? And how can we work with you to identify a problem of practice, in your own school communities? Like once a year, you might pick one area where you want to make some, where you want to make some is that how you say it? Headway? Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I always have to check with Colin because of my bilingualism. I'm like, what's the word that I'm supposed to say in my mind that I'm translating? But so for example, the part about, the diverse hires, and can we pick this one thing where we want to really make some progress in this area, and how do we actually work as a small community, as a committee? Many schools, I know in our schools, they have racial equity groups just among teachers where they're looking at curriculum, they're looking at books, they're looking at what the art is. I loved walking by here today and seeing all of the art of the portraits of students of color. That was really cool. So that's kind of like what we're asking districts to kind of embark on. And in terms of what we're providing to our Boston students and families, we're going to be doing cultural identity workshops with them at the Boston office, just to kind of make them feel like that it's okay to be different, it's okay to look the way that you are and feel proud about that. Don't feel like you have to hide who you are. That happened to me when I was I went to a primarily white school when I was growing up. I went to a Catholic school in Lynn, Massachusetts. And one of the things that I remember doing for myself is that I used to walk around all the hallways sucking my lips in the entire time. If I didn't have this mask, you would see that I have nice, beautiful lips. Okay, so I was going around hiding them and sucking them in because they used to say something about it. They were making fun of me for that. And then my nickname in high school, made by them, by my classmates, was Tacos, because I went to school in the 90s or in the late 80s, 90s, and all they knew about immigration was Mexico. And I'm from Dominican Republic, so my nickname was Tacos. I was used to hide my lips. Shortly after, Angelina Jolie, got her little Botox, whatever it was, and everybody loved big lips. And I'm like, that's not fair. So those are like, just the cultural identity part, how do we make people feel proud of who they are? We have an equity action team. Some of you may have heard or may have come to one of our BEAT programs, the Boston Education Equity Teams, where the kids actually get hired by us in Boston and research issues of equity, both in their school and in their community. And they basically go out and they make presentations for improvement. And I think it's so important to hear the voices of our students. We have Mecca University to do different panels and workshops right in the backyard of our family and our students. And we're currently hiring a community organizer. Because again, if you see the theme, I love organizing. So they can organize our parents and our students and give them leadership skills so that we can hear from them what they want to see happen. And then with the suburban communities, we're actually doing these presentations. We've gone to Newton and done it to their family organizations for racial justice. We're going to Marblehead racial justice team in a week from now. We're going to Westwood tomorrow to their community MLK event. So really kind of, taking a lot of this information on the road and seeing if we can get people to activate. We also created, with the support and basically leading this was led by Colin. We actually have a MECO exhibit that you'll see a little picture of it. So we have the whole history of the MECO program. Some of you came to our offices already, and then it exists as a little mini museum there. And we actually doing tours led by young people, and we're teaching our own students the history of the MECO program, and they always feel so proud about it. They said, I never knew what this program was about. I just knew my mother signed me up. And they feel even more, more empowered right now to really advocate for equity. So we actually have those that program as well, and they actually our students are going to be doing tours in the spring. And I know Tony took a handful of people on tours already, but we have our own that's about the history of the MECO program with the Nubian Square neighborhood to try to bring in, make sure there's a dual program. And then the legislative advocacy, as you heard us saying, we are fully funded by the state legislators. So every single year around this time, when it's budget season, we have to go meet with all of the legislators and let them know why they should support MECO and why they should give us more money. Is there an idea or a program that they have in mind that we want to bring to the districts? We were advocating 2 years ago, for example, for late busing in every single town. We were advocating for racial equity initiatives and training, and then that's how we were able to get from $21 million to $27 million. So we can't do this without the actual suburban people because they're the ones that vote for the legislators. So in terms of MECO today, what are we doing at the headquarters office? So that we have 4 main functions in our headquarters office. One is student recruitment and referral, family support, convening our communities, and then fulfilling the promise of integration, while every single district, as you know, is responsible for then enrolling their own students once we refer them, hiring their own staff. The staff works directly for the district, educating the students and providing full support services. So once the student is here, they are part of your community, and the expectation is that whatever you would do for somebody that lives here, you would do it for the MECO student. And we say that all of the time when somebody calls me, what should I do about the situation? And I have my signature one question that I ask right back. Well, if they lived up the street, what would you do? Do that. That's what you're gonna do. And that's really, when you're thinking about equity, that is the best way for you to make the best decision for our students. If you put on that lens and you say, if they lived here, what would I do? Then it eliminates all of the things. Because So right now, the recruitment, we have a new campaign called Worth the Ride. These are actual pictures of all of our students. And so we have a social media campaign called #WorthTheRide. That a lot of people are debating 2 things right now in terms of recruitment that's been a little bit difficult during that pandemic. One, the actual enrollment in all public schools nationwide and in the state has gone down, and I think you guys know a little bit about that. It's been in all kinds of news and newspaper articles. Number 2, people feel like this is a long ride for our students. Most of our students are getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And is it worth the ride to do all of this and then deal with racial incidents, or deal in a way where they might not feel welcome, where they're getting assignments that don't make sense, where people are mocking them and saying things, where maybe they don't feel like, they just have to get on a bus and leave right away. There's not opportunity to stay behind and be part of it. One other quick example is that in Brooklyn, we had one day we had the green campaign that everybody, let's walk to school. You can just laugh about that because what does that mean for MECO, right? So everybody's talking about this. We're gonna give hats and T-shirts. Everybody's gonna get a sticker. If you don't use your car, save energy. So obviously I had to have them, mind you, I didn't do any of these things as a MECO CEO at all. These are all things that I did as a parent before I got the job. So then I went and had the meeting with them and I said, okay, so how would you like the MECO students to participate? Radio silence. I was like, so my kids wanna get a T-shirt. They wanna get the hat. They want to get the school pride. So after that meeting, simple solution, let's drop off the bus, 3 blocks down. Let's have some of the community folks start up the walk there. And let's walk up together, have donuts waiting for them, and do all of that. And then everybody got to participate. So sometimes having a MECO parent in the picture can give you a perspective that you might not have thought about. So in all of these instances, when all these things happen to me, I wouldn't go there fighting or arguing. I was just let's look at it from a different lens. And did we have a missed opportunity? Did we have a blind spot? And then it made the school better. You know, same thing with Hispanic Heritage Month, which is another thing that I had to work on, because in terms of feeling inclusive and like we belong, that was one of the first things that I actually did before I got this job. That, you know, I kept going to the school and I said, wow, everything in the United States celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, you know, and I'm like, and I'm walking into the school and I'm not seeing anything that has to do about celebrating that. And I was there for 10 years. And then finally I said, guys, are we going to do something to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month? I don't feel included. I don't feel like when I'm looking at the Spanish book, for those do languages, the Spanish book only referenced 2 countries. It was only, which 2 countries do you think it was only referencing? Spain and what? And Mexico, that's it. And I'm like, well, I'm from Dominican Republic. So one day my one daughter started to question me. She's like, Mommy, are you sure Dominican Republic is a Latin country? I'm like, yes, I am. I am quite sure. I know where I'm from. She's like, well, how come they never talk about it? I'm like, well, you talk about it. And then she got an assignment and she got to present on it. But one cool story, because Omar's here and I know he can make that happen. So I met with the superintendent, and the superintendent basically went ahead and changed the school menu for a month. And it was all Latin food, and it was celebrated district-wide, so that was pretty cool. Oh my God, I'm looking at the time and I thought I had till 4 and I only have till 3:45. This is crazy. Okay, let me move really fast through the last couple of slides, just so that you know what we can support in our Mecca office. So we have direct programming. We have a homework club that we assign with volunteer tutors. We have the BEAT program that I already told you about, and we have the plan right now. We just hire students to work for us and actually build leadership skills and work readiness. The partnerships in Boston, what I like to say about those things that I love about these people is that we are focusing on integration beyond our MECO district. We're focused on integration at any actual institution that wants to diversify. So for example, you see the island school here that goes to the Bahamas. They gave us a scholarship 3 years in a row to send a MECO student because they felt they didn't have enough people of color going to the Bahamas to study marine biology. The YMCA was the overnight camps in New Hampshire, barely had diversity because of Waylon started this, by the way. Waylon was the one that brought this to my attention. And we have increased the diversity in the YMCA overnight camps by 30%. And we had a $300,000 grant from our foundation to actually send our students there. So all of these partners here are people that are trying to diversify, and we have a brand new scholarship 4 years for a MECO student to go to Emerson College. These are all people that approached us because they wanted to diversify. Right now, we also have a social worker that you can request, and that social worker can come and do workshops on social, emotional, cultural identity, emotional regulation, executive functioning, and we have an academic person that can put them in touch with resources in Boston and college and career readiness. Convening families, really cool stuff. If you join our Monday newsletter, the MMMMM, Millie's Monday MECO message that Colin actually sends out. If you as a school staff can actually join that mailing list, and you will find out about all the things that we have going on. We have MECO Presents, which is a night out in the theaters, only seeing shows about race and culture and identity. They're all super amazing and brings you to a different culture. We have mini grants available right now for $2,000 that we can give to any school district who wants to bring in any cultural performance or cultural type of celebration, anything that has to do with the performing arts. Poetry, spoken word, whatever you want to do, we have money available, and then you can come and sign up to do our tours to actually learn about the history of the Mecca Program and explore Boston with us. This is a brand new space that we just opened up during the pandemic, a beautiful computer lab, conference rooms, and this is the exhibit hall, the little mini museum that we've built, or that i.e. Colin built, and it's really pretty amazing and eye-opening. Right now, I want you guys to come with us in June. We have a conference coming up called the Living the Legacy of Mecca. It will be at the Sheraton Hotel. We have an amazing speaker that we hired nationally that's going to come and speak to us, and we're going to have a great half a day opportunity on a Friday in June. And it's hope that you guys can come and get a couple of tables and show up. It's like super cheap. I charge like $25 to make sure you guys show up. So nothing crazy, but it's a morning at a hotel with breakfast and food. And then this is how you can keep in touch with us. The Monday message. Also, the William James College is something that I wanted to tell you about because you guys are educators. We have a new partnership with them, and they are reducing the cost of many of the trainings that they're providing for anybody that works at a Mecca town. So we just had a principal training that started. It was $18,000, and we got it down to $7,000 with a Mecca relationship, just because I'm working directly with the college president. And we're going to have a number of series that you're going to find out through the Monday message. Every month we're going to have one workshop for free out of William James College around diversity, around mental health, around all the disciplining. And that's just to get a taste for you of what that's going to be about working with William James. And then they're going to offer us, we're working on designing with them a program for just only Mecca educators from across the 33 towns that will take a teacher year-long PD or a certificate program at William James. So stay looking out for that. And these are the Mecca Presents events that are coming up. Accommodating Live, if Colin wants to work with anybody who wants to even bring a group, and that's about the Colombian culture, The Bluest Eyes from Toni Morrison. You guys, I think, know about that book. And then this one is about an island one, and these are all available for you guys to come and do this with us these are $75 tickets at $10. And then again, all through our partnerships and our relationships and our fundraising. And then what you can do to make Mecca better, read and talk about racism and bias with your colleagues, among yourselves. It's okay to be comfortable with the discomfort. These conversations are not going to be easy, and we don't want them to be easy because you're talking about serious stuff. Support and trust the experiences of the people of color that you're working with, whether they're staff, student, and teachers, because maybe there's something to be learned that we can do to improve. Think about how your curriculum and your activities and your engagement methods can be more accessible and welcoming to all of the residents and families of color, because you also have resident families here that may not always, feel like the curriculum and the activities are talking and speaking to them. And at the end of the day, I want to end with what Ruth Batson said, our founding mother. I believe that integration is as much a part of education as is reading, writing, and arithmetic. We just can't live in an isolated world. I can't think of any more natural way for kids to learn that there are other people in the world than through school. So I leave you with that because we have an incredible responsibility. We have an incredible responsibility as educators to really change the direction that we're going, not only as a program, as an educational institution, as a state, and as our nation. Imagine all the things that we've seen work, play out in this country. And imagine if the people leading those efforts were people that were led by us and educated by us to be more welcoming and to be more inclusive and more accepting of each other. I think we have a great responsibility, and I'm excited to share that responsibility with you. So thank you very much. Thank you. I said we were going to have like a little bit for Q&A. We have 1 minute if anybody wants to say anything or any comments, for the next few minutes. And I'm going to ask Omar, I'm going to take a selfie, if you guys allow me, with all of us in this stage so we can include it in our Monday message and hit up Colin or find out how we get the newsletter. Tony knows how to have access to all of the mini grants, the Mecca Presents, the social worker that can come and support you and get on our newsletter. But does anybody have any last-minute thoughts or comments before we leave? I thank you so much for your time, but I just do want to at least leave it for that. 1 minute, if anybody has anything. Did you learn something new? We already said that, right? Do you understand the Mecca program better? Do you guys think you can join us on Mecca 2.0? That should be a louder applause. Yeah. Okay. You want to do the selfie? All right, we'll do a selfie. Okay. Oh, sorry.